The spiritual seeker thinks it's escaping. But what if seeking is the trap? Before the secret could sell the law of attraction, the mind had already accepted the law of lack. That is the part almost nobody wants to look at. The book did not create the hunger. The movie did not create the hunger. The Oprah appearances did not create the hunger. The teachers did not create the hunger. The vision boards did not create the hunger. The affirmations did not create the hunger. The hunger had to be there first. The world was already full of people quietly believing something essential was missing. More money, more love, more success, more health, more peace, more meaning, more God. The marketplace did not invent that ache. It noticed the ache. It packaged the ache. It branded the ache. Then it sold the ache back to the seeker as a spiritual path. That is cold, because bait only works where hunger is already active. The fisherman does not create the fish's appetite. He studies it. He casts toward it. He hides the hook inside what the fish already wants. That is how spiritual marketing works when the ego gets hold of it. It does not walk into a whole mind and create lack. It walks into a mind that already believes in lack and offers a prettier chase. The mouse was already running before the secret arrived. The mouse already believed, "I do not have." The mouse already believed, "I am not there." The mouse already believed, "Something outside me must arrive before I can be whole." Then manifestation culture came along and said, "Good news, you can attract it." But attract it from where? Attract it from when? Attract it to whom? To attract something means it is not here. To attract something means it is not now. To attract something means distance has already been accepted. To attract something means the mind has already divided reality into two parts. Here is the one who wants. Over there is the thing wanted. Between them is time. Between them is method. Between them is effort. Between them is spiritual technique. Between them is the entire cat and mouse game with incense burning in the background. The mouse thinks it is escaping because the chase now has holy language. It is not chasing money. It is attracting abundance. It is not chasing romance. It is manifesting sacred partnership. It is not chasing status. It is stepping into its highest timeline. It is not chasing control. It is co-creating with the universe. Same mouse, cleaner costume. Same maze, better lighting. And this is why spiritual seeking belongs in the cat and mouse series. The ego does not care whether the chase is dirty or divine. It does not care whether the mouse is running through a nightclub, a prison yard, a political argument, a romantic fantasy, a self-improvement seminar, or a spiritual retreat. The ego only cares that the mouse keeps running. That is the whole game. Movement without arrival. Effort without peace. Seeking without finding. A path that keeps promising freedom while quietly preserving the identity that believes it is not free. This is where the secret becomes such a powerful symbol. Not because it was the beginning of spiritual seeking. It was not. It was the mass market revelation of a hunger that was already sitting in the collective mind. It gave lack a glossy cover. It gave desire a spiritual law. It gave wanting a vocabulary. It gave the ego permission to keep wanting without feeling shallow. Now the separate self could say, "I am not materialistic. I am manifesting." Now acquisition could sound metaphysical. Now absence could sound like alignment. Now delay could sound like divine timing. Now the old belief, "I am not whole," could dress itself up as, "I am calling in my highest good." But what had to come before? That is always the question. Before participation, there is a frame. Before a person buys the book, attends the seminar, follows the teacher, signs up for the retreat, or writes the check to the universe, the mind has already accepted a premise. The premise is simple. Something is missing. Once that frame is accepted, participation becomes automatic. If peace is outside the mind will go shopping for peace. If God is somewhere else, the mind will invent a path to God. If salvation is in the future, the mind will make a religion out of time. If wholeness depends on an object, the mind will become a professional chaser of objects. That is participation. Not merely behavior, agreement. The seeker participates by agreeing with the frame. The frame says, "You are here. What you need is there. Now begin." That is the trap. The trap is not always the teacher. The trap is not always the book. The trap is not always the retreat. The trap is not always the method. The trap is the unquestioned assumption that truth is absent. That is why attraction is separation pretending to be spirituality. It begins with a gap. Then it teaches the seeker how to cross the gap. But A Course in Miracles does not begin there. Lesson 150 does not say, "I will attract atonement." It does not say, "I will manifest salvation." It does not say, "I will visualize God until God arrives." It says, "My mind holds only what I think with God." That sentence is a blade. It cuts through the whole decorated structure of lack. If the mind holds only what it thinks with God, then lack is not in the real mind. Fear is not in the real mind. Scarcity is not in the real mind. The belief that peace is missing is not in the real mind. The belief that salvation must be achieved later is not in the real mind. The belief that God is absent is not in the real mind. Then Lesson 150 reviews, "I will accept atonement for myself." Accept, not attract. Accept, not chase. Accept, not brand. Accept, not become. Acceptance collapses distance. Manifestation depends on distance. Acceptance is now. Manifestation is later. Acceptance receives what is already true. Manifestation seeks what is believed absent. That is why the seeker identity cannot really love atonement, even while talking about awakening. Atonement does not improve the seeker. It ends the need for the seeker. Then the lesson says, "Only salvation can be said to cure." There it is. Not the money, not the lover, not the platform, not the healed body, not the retreat, not the certification, not the guru, not the manifestation, not the thing finally arriving in form. Only salvation can be said to cure, because only salvation addresses the original error. The original error is not that the mouse lacks cheese. The original error is that the Son of God believed he was a mouse. That is why getting the object never ends the hunger. The car arrives. Then what? The relationship arrives. Then what? The money arrives. Then what? The platform arrives. Then what? The retreat breakthrough happens. Then what? The mind simply chooses another corridor, another goal, another teacher, another method, another level, another healing, another timeline, another piece of spiritual cheese at the end of another hallway. So the real product was never the object. The real product was the survival of the one who wants. That is what the ego protects. The ego can survive poverty. It can survive wealth. It can survive loneliness. It can survive romance. It can survive religion. It can survive spirituality.
It can survive a best-selling manifestation movement. It can survive enlightenment language. It can even survive talking about ego death. What it cannot survive is the honest questioning of the one who says, "I need this." That is the forbidden question. Who is the one trying to manifest? Who is the one trying to arrive? Who is the one trying to become spiritual? Who is the one trying to attract God? Who is the one who believes salvation is not already available? Once that question is asked, the whole spiritual marketplace starts trembling, because the marketplace needs the wound to remain open. A finished seeker is bad for business. A cured lack is bad for the brand. A mind that accepts atonement now is no longer a customer of delay. That is why God so easily becomes branding in the ego's hands, not God in truth, the ego's version of God. A God who helps the separate self get what it wants. A God who validates desire. A God who rewards visualization. A God who delivers outcomes. A God who becomes a strategy. A God who becomes a funnel. A God who becomes a product line. A God who becomes a stage, a package, a VIP ticket, an inner circle, a certification, a coaching offer, and a next-level upgrade. That is not holiness. That is commerce wearing a halo. And the seeker often does not see it because the seeker wants the promise to be true. That is participation. The teacher can only sell the gap because the seeker already believes in the gap. The guru can only occupy the pedestal because the seeker already believes someone else has what is missing.
The brand can only monetize the path because the seeker already believes there is a distance to travel. The bait only works because the hunger came first. This is also where the darker symbols appear. The Sweat Lodge tragedy connected to James Arthur Ray is not merely a story about one teacher, one event, or one terrible outcome. It is a severe symbol of what can happen when spiritual hunger hands authority to a special body. People came seeking transformation. They came seeking breakthrough. They came seeking purification. They came seeking rebirth. They entered a frame where suffering could be interpreted as progress. That is dangerous. Because once suffering is spiritualized, the seeker may stop trusting the obvious. The body says, "This is too much." The fear says, "Leave." The quiet clarity says, "Something is wrong." But the seeker says, "Maybe this is my resistance. Maybe this is the breakthrough. Maybe this is the purification. Maybe this is what awakening requires." That is how the ego weaponizes the path. The seeker is no longer simply chasing. The seeker is overriding. Overriding clarity. Overriding sanity. Overriding the simple recognition that truth would not demand sacrifice. Guru dependence is just special relationship dressed in spiritual authority. There is a special one who knows. There is an unhealed one who does not. There is a gap. There is hierarchy. There is obedience. There is sacrifice. There is the cat wearing the teacher's robe. And there is the mouse calling fear surrender. That is why the issue is not spirituality itself. The issue is purpose. A book can be helpful. A teacher can be helpful. A retreat can be helpful. A practice can be helpful. But what is it being used for? Is it undoing the seeker or decorating the seeker? Is it questioning the frame or making the frame more beautiful? Is it bringing the mind back to now or giving the mind a holier future? Is it accepting salvation or postponing salvation in the name of preparation. That is the distinction. The ego does not mind spirituality when spirituality becomes delay. It does not mind prayer when prayer becomes bargaining. It does not mind meditation when meditation becomes self-image. It does not mind study when study becomes spiritual superiority. It does not mind manifestation when manifestation keeps lack alive. It does not mind teachers when teachers keep the student identity intact. The ego only panics when the seeker starts questioning the need to seek, because the seeker survives by never arriving. Almost healed, almost awake, almost aligned, almost there, almost free, almost abundant, almost surrendered, almost enlightened, almost home. That almost is the ego's oxygen. The mouse needs another corridor. The seeker needs another step. The brand needs another wound. The teacher needs another dependency. The market needs another lack. The path needs another future. But lesson 150 brings everything back to the present. My mind holds only what I think with God. I will accept atonement for myself. Only salvation can be said to cure. That is not a motivational slogan. That is a complete collapse of the chase. Nothing real is missing. Nothing eternal is delayed. Nothing God created is waiting to become whole. So what is the seeker really seeking? It is seeking the end of itself while trying to survive the ending. That is the contradiction. The seeker wants God, but not at the cost of the seeker. The seeker wants truth, but not if truth reveals that the seeker was the hiding place. The seeker wants salvation, but not if salvation means there was no separate self to improve, manifest, purify, awaken, brand, or complete. So the chase continues. The mouse runs. The cat follows. The corridor changes names. First it was romance, then outrage, then self-improvement, then manifestation, then ascension, then enlightenment. But the structure remains. Here is the seeker. There is salvation. Begin again. That is the trap. The spiritual seeker thinks it is escaping the world, escaping suffering, escaping the ego, escaping limitation, escaping the old self, escaping lack. But what if seeking is the trap? Not because truth should not be loved, not because spiritual teachings cannot serve, not because practice has no value, but because the seeker identity is the belief that truth is not already true. The seeker is the belief that God is elsewhere. The seeker is the belief that peace has prerequisites. The seeker is the belief that salvation belongs to the future. The seeker is the mouse saying, "I am almost free," while never questioning whether captivity was ever real. So the final question is not, what do I need to manifest? The final question is, what lack did I believe in before manifestation sounded necessary? The final question is not, which teacher can get me there? The final question is, what there did I invent to avoid here? The final question is not, how do I become more spiritual? The final question is, who is the one trying to become? Because if the mind holds only what it thinks with God, truth is not missing. If atonement can be accepted now, salvation is not waiting in time. If only salvation can be said to cure, Nothing in the world was ever going to satisfy the hunger that came before the chase. That hunger was not for objects. It was not for money. It was not for romance. It was not for enlightenment as an identity. It was not for spiritual status. It was not for a better dream. It was the mistaken memory of wholeness interpreted through the ego as lack. And once lack is believed, the mouse runs. But once lack is questioned, the maze begins to dissolve. The secret was not the secret. Manifestation was not the cure. The guru was not the answer. The path was not the destination. The chase was not awakening. The seeker was the final hiding place. What if the seeker is what blocks the finding?